Welcome to Enhance TV. We have with us today as our guest Paul Laville from T21 Training, and if this is on YouTube then I'll put up a permalink to his website so you can go and check out his website. Paul has won awards for his training. He builds the training infrastructures, also gives a lot of support, very, very detailed. He's also a published author, an all-round genius, I would say. So welcome, Paul.
Hi, Jade. How do I follow that introduction? Thank you very much.
You have to live up to it now. Yeah.
No pressure.
So what we'll talk about today is how to engage learners. I've got a few questions for you. So
Okay.
if we start, what would you say from your experience is the best way to engage people, especially people that are quite resistant to learning? What have you found?
I think it's always best, as with anybody, is try and pitch at whatever level your audience is at. So if you're, in order to do that, it's always best to know who your audience is, who your customer is. So, you know, if for example, you've got a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids who are all kind of texting on their mobile phones, that's going to be a very different audience to people who are sort of maybe 55, 60 years old, who are probably a little bit more focused. So the best way to engage anybody is really just to, you know, pitch yourself at the right level, which sounds very simple, but can have its own challenges.
What techniques do you use? Because I know from the work that you do, because we've worked together, so you use many various mediums. How are there particular formats that you can use to keep people going through the programs? Are there any?
Yeah, there's. I guess for me, what it comes down to really is keeping everything moving. You know, so I mean, in this day and age, with so much media everywhere, there's so much saturation of media everywhere. We look on our phones, on our computers, on the TVs, everywhere. You know, we're much more agile in you know, in the way we approach information input, and you know, we can cope with input from loads of different sources at the same time. So if you sit somebody down who's used to having all this extra sensory information coming at them right, left and centre, and you sit them down in front of a kind of standard PowerPoint that goes on for about 2.5, 4 hours or whatever, then you're going to lose them pretty quickly. So the best thing I find is to actually keep bombarding them with different information from different sources. And you kind of think, you know, maybe, you know, on the one hand, that's almost counterintuitive because you think, well, I'm just going to get overloaded with information. But it's surprising how much information we can actually deal with. Now, the important thing is not to deliver that in a constant stream for about an hour. It's to do it in short, sharp bursts, absolutely full of impact. And this is why, you know, when you look at some of our a lot of our training products, and this is why I work with you a lot, because film is really one of the best ways of delivering a lot of information in a very short space of time. And, you know, when that's coupled with some of the other media that we use, it's really, really powerful, really effective. And people do engage with it because it's never sitting still for long enough.
That's really interesting to hear, because I would have thought it would have been completely counterintuitive. I know, because everybody's looking at simplicity, making it easy. And yeah, look, because we've worked on quite a few training programs together with a video, which has been, I mean, a great lesson for me watching you work and the scripts that you create, coming in and directing them. And I think the one thing that you do have that you've spoken about is that ability to be able to go into the world, empathise, resonate, and be on the shop floor with people, come from their lifestyle perspective, so that they you know, I guess so they know that their employer cares about them, understands them.
Yeah, I think, you know, picking up on what you said there, actually, empathy is absolutely crucial. I mean, you know, the training that I do is sales training, and in sales, empathy is really important because that's kind of what gives you the platform on which you communicate to your customers. And from my point of view, it's exactly the same as a trainer to a bunch of trainees, or whether it's just one trainee, it doesn't matter. You know, we've got to be at the same level. And one of the ways to kind of build that bridge between trainer and trainee is to have empathy. So you understand exactly who they are, what their situation is, what their needs are, and you pitch yourself right at that level so you can really build that bridge. And and once you get that connection, then whatever you transport across that bridge is more happily received at the other side of it. So that's it's crucial. I mean, empathy is such a key thing. And again, going back to film, as you were saying, it's we can put cram so many messages into a 2-minute, 4-minute film. But again, if we're not doing that on the same level, if we're not empathic with our audience, we'll just lose them within 10 seconds. So, and I see that a lot in training films, which I had to undergo when I was, in employment, working for somebody else, rather than working for myself. And I'd have to sit in front of a bunch of training films and watch people go through stuff that I had absolutely no connection with whatsoever. And I'm sure they spent loads of money and great production values and everything else. And there's somebody who's saying, and of course, what we have now on our left is another special offer, which you absolutely must tell your customers, that sort of thing.
It's funny because there's no imagination. It's not a real world. It's one person pitching it from their own mentality. And I find this, and I think that's what's great because you have such a detailed understanding, because you've been in your industry for so many years, that it's an absolute pleasure. Because I come in and kind of like try and using the costumes, the props, but it's the characters. And I think you said earlier that you're dealing with a diverse geographic. And I think what's wonderful about the videos is that you have that young persona up against trying to relate to and work with the older people that have been there for years and years and years. And I think that's interesting because those are the conflicts that people deal with. That's where the tensions are created. And I think your scripts and the videos help people understand it, see it, but point out we've got a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it is a really tricky thing sometimes. If I could say that I got it right every time, then I'd probably retire to my island in the Bahamas. We don't get it right every time. But if we is
that the one you go to every other weekend?
That's the one, yeah. If we hit marks 85, 90% of the time, then that's great. And a lot of our training product now, because it's online, and as you were saying, it's distributed out to such a wide demographic. We've got kids of 17 years old just starting out in their first job, and at the other end of the scale, we've got people who are sort of either retired or semi-retired, sort of in their late 60s. And, with a wealth of experience, and, there's no fooling those guys, and there's no fooling the younger kids either. We've got everybody else in between, from, sort of the guy who knows his technology and is absolutely whizzo with the latest kit, to my Auntie Mavis, who maybe works in the shop, 60 hours a week and doesn't really care. She's just there to pick up her money at the end of the day. So, she's got to go through a training. There's no point her just going through the numbers. She's got to understand. She's got to learn from it.
And I think you can't get away from. I think you have to know that there are those stereotypes, but then you have to bring them into humanity, which is what you do really well.
Yeah, you're right, and that's where we get character from, isn't it? And that's what I like to distinguish between the stereotypical kind of customer, the stereotypical person who works in a shop, regardless of what age level they are. And, when I look at training videos of the past, it was always the young, spotty kid, out of school, the older, wiser, more sensible adult. And, the customer's always right. And, that's the thing about some of the oldest training videos I used to watch. The customer always sticks to the script. I challenge anybody who's in to find a customer who sticks to the script and says exactly the right things, exactly what you want them to say at the right time, so you can respond as per your training video. It just doesn't happen. So you're right. What I try to do with the training films that I script is bring them right into the real world, because that for me is the only. On the one hand, it's the only way they're ever going to be effective, and by which I mean that the learnings will actually have some meaning behind them. And on the other hand, it's also probably the only way really that people can be able to engage with them, because if as a trainee, you're watching something unravel, which you can identify with immediately. It's like, yes, I've had a customer like that. I've been in that situation, So, and maybe, maybe I do have the way they're doing in the video, or we do it the other way and show them what can go wrong through the video, and we really play with it.
That's really important, isn't it? That they have there are role models. And this is a thing of like using actual staff sometimes because they become role models. I know I've done training dramas with Zurich Finance, and predominantly they were the employees. And it was nice, we got invited out to Zurich to celebrate, and the feedback was everybody was a little bit, they were a bit stunned because they were going around the world, going around the globe, where everybody had seen these training dramas and people were calling them by their character name and they'd become famous. But you go, oh, there's the other element of it. If you use your staff, they become personalities within your environment and people look up to them. And it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, they do. It's you almost kind of elevate people to.
You do, and then people want they want to be them. It's a bit cool. But I suppose coming away from the video, because that's one tool of yours. I mean, you can create your training videos, but then you need to take people through the journey, which is what a big thing. You know, that's what you do online. Is to design the program for them to follow. And I suppose there are rewards and learning points. Can you tell me more about that side of the business?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, when you're, I mean, distance learning is nothing new. You know, 30, 40 years ago, it just used to be by postage. Rather than, and then it was through DVDs and videos and DVDs and things, and now distance learning is predominantly online. But when I looked into this in some detail a couple of years ago, what I actually found was that for the most part, and this is, I don't include every single online learning course out there because there's some really, really top drawer online learning, learning management systems which are brilliant. But the majority that I saw, at least anyway, hadn't really evolved their approach from the old days of postage or DVD. You get a DVD or a CD-ROM or something, just whack it in the computer and it just cycles through a whole bunch of here's a bunch of information. Here's a question, move on to the next thing. And, I mean, oh my goodness, you'd sit there going through this stuff and you would just lose the will to live. You're told you have to get through the end of this course, for God's sake, some real questions come into play. It's like, do I really need this job badly enough to get through this stuff?
So how do you, because I think that's really valid that you look at what doesn't work, so how have you turned that around? What approach do you use?
We use a system of play, challenge, and reward to get people moving through, engaging with and moving through the courses. So, on the one hand, there's a huge talk about gamification in training, which essentially means that it's play, challenge, reward. It doesn't mean we translate all the training into a bunch of games, but we follow the mechanics of gameplay to get people through from one side to the other. And in a bunch of, the online systems I'm looking at now for my particular industry, this may not be right for every industry, but for my industry, the way I approach it is because it's actually looking at, the big inspiration was actually looking at Xbox and PlayStation and, that whole kind of gamer sort of dashboard and mentality and stuff, where you play through a game, you get through a tutorial, you get an achievement point, you unlock a whole system of rewards that empowers you then to go and take the next level, which again you sort of play to achieve rewards, achievement points and trophies and all kinds of things like that.
I think the reward system really should not be underestimated. It's extraordinary how people respond to rewards and things.
It is, isn't it? It really is. And I mean, for my mind, you've got two elements of that. You can either punish somebody for doing it wrong, or you can reward them for doing it well. And usually, the reward aspects, works better. Yeah. But what we do is we tie that into into building points. So for each kind of we split the training course down into small chunks, and for each if you successfully complete one of those chunks, so you read. Or you somehow engage with the information, whether it's a film, whether it's an animation, whether it's some text, or whether it's something to download and do, or whatever it is, you engage it, you play it. That's the play element. What we do then is we challenge you. So it's like, well, okay, so you've done that now let's challenge you. And this is where we kind of build in quizzes and the actual games. So it might be just a straightforward multiple choice quiz, or a true or false, or maybe some kind of drag and drop, or point to the right picture, or whatever it is. That's the challenge bit. And also you get that right, then you get the reward. You get a nice badge which pops up with a bunch of points to it, and then those points go and populate a leaderboard. And I tell you now, this gets really, really competitive because the spaces at the top of the leaderboard are absolutely, people are fighting for these things.
I like that as well. I like the community aspect, and people are playing and vying against each other, because that's really important. I just think on a kind of like, I think all of us, I think, need to almost be with people and socialise to calibrate our level and know where we are. And I guess on the online learning, it must be really important to spar against people, to pitch, you know, to know your progress. That's
yeah, it can really be, and I'll tell you for why. Because a lot of online learning, as with any distance learning, it can be very isolated. If I'm the trainee, I'm here on my computer, it's just me. That's it. I've just got this screen in front of me. I'm not really engaging with Bill, Bob, and Ben, and saying everybody else. It's just me. And actually having that points and leaderboard system built into the training does, as you said.
Yeah.
It can't fully populate the whole community aspect. When you've got a bunch of trainees in a room, then you've got a community. But we can't do that with distance learning, with online learning, but we can replicate some of the conditions to make the experience a little bit more fun and enjoyable for these isolated individuals.
And that seems so crucial, especially because the learning is all about team building. So you kind of need to be part of some kind of team whilst you're doing it. Otherwise, it's counterintuitive, I guess. It can be. Yeah, and like I said, it's quite easy to forget that you are part of a team. So we're constantly reminding trainees that they're not just doing this thing alone. There's other members of their shop, their business, whatever it is, that are also going through this thing, with them. We have we tend to build in forums into the training platform as well. So again, if anyone's got any questions, or if they, anyone with a huge amount of knowledge, I've done all this stuff, I know it all. Well, if you know it all, help other people who perhaps don't know it all. So, we set up forums, we ask questions, we get a little bit of engagement through that way. And we usually have some kind of social community aspect to it as well. So, once all the trainees are kind of involved in the site and they've all uploaded profile pictures and they're starting to populate leaderboards and, accumulate badges for bragging rights and all kinds of things, then, you can follow them. Other trainees can follow them. So you follow them on Facebook and stuff like all that kind of stuff. So that sounds fantastic. It sounds like a real training ecology, if you know what I mean. And coming back to the video, I can only imagine going through those programs in isolation, to be able to click into a window where there's an actual real shop environment with real people learning and going through it. Must be such a reprieve and relief from just the the data aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really quite rewarding, in one respect for for me sort of scripting these things and a few filming them as well. But again, going back to how it was in the day when you'd sit through half an hour training video and you just you'd be just crying into it. Whereas now, between us, we've managed to turn that around, and the feedback which has come back, it was just that. These videos are enjoyable. People love watching them, and they want to watch them again and again and again and again, which is so important, because the more times you watch something like that, the more you remember everything, retention of knowledge, all that kind of stuff. That all happens with repeated viewing. And if we have a video which nobody wants to watch even once, let alone for 2, 3, 4 times, we failed. And this is where I think a lot of the older style training videos, really do fall down. Or we've moved on so much. We expect a lot more as audiences now from our media, from our content. The expectations are way up there. You can't fool people with something which is just mass market, cheap as chips, get the job done, go down the bar afterwards. You just can't do that these days.
So, coming toward the end, just a few things. We were talking about rewards, and I think the work that you have done and I have done, we had a lovely reward, or you did, and I was able to experience it through your company, T21. So awards were won for the training dramas. So we'll touch on that. Also, if you tell me about the clients, is it behind you?
It's behind me. There it is.
Here it is. Oh, do you want to tell me about it?
It's quite difficult to see because it's all glass, so it's only when I pass it in front of myself you see the distortion that it makes. But that's let me see that particularly well. That's the award. The award is it's one of the oldest awards in the electronic retail industry, actually. It's sponsored by a company, a magazine called the Innovative Electrical Retailing Magazine, IER, to everybody in the know. But they do this thing every year, and it was really quite surprising that we won it, because we're a young company, we're a young business. We don't have masses of budget in the way that a lot of the manufacturers do, who were also there on the site as well, so at the awards ceremony as well. So it was a really nice surprise to get that at the end of our first real year in business. So but then of course the expectations are now right up there, so we always have the pressure to meet that and exceed it.
And what was the feedback? What feedback did you hear? Did they give you did they give you some kind of feedback on why you won?
Do you know what? It's bizarrely, no, we don't get it. It's just the fact you won it. Now move on.
That's enough.
We've got another award to hand out. But looking at the criteria, the criteria is all about innovation. Really, it's when we put the award submission together, it's the big question is how innovative, or how do you feel your product is more innovative than somebody else's, or your solution is innovative, in what ways, how do you substantiate that? So going through everything which we kind of built, I felt we were easily able to prove exactly how innovative every element of the training platform that we built actually is. Like I said to you, it's e-learning, distance learning is nothing new, and there's an awful lot of solutions out there. But I think what me and my guys and you guys had done with it by this, the partnership that we all had was, make something that really sort of stood out from the crowd, stood out and made a big difference to the way people engage with training.
Yeah, that's great. To be an innovator in your field is fantastic. So tell me about the clients that you work for, and then to wrap this up, I suppose it's kind of advice, whether there's like 3 values that you have, as in advice to companies who are going to take on training drama, maybe looking for a company like yours, what you would say to them to get the best out of their programs.
Well, my clients are specifically within, although not exclusively, within the electrical retail industry. The reason for that is because that's an industry which I sort of spent the last 20 odd years in, so I know it, and I know a lot of people in there, so that's what kind of works for me. But then outside that, we're also getting involved in supporting smaller businesses. Start to think about how they actually sell themselves, their product, their service, and reach out to new customers and resell to existing customers, and basically develop a sales strategy going forward, to kind of build their business. It's surprising how many startups and smaller businesses, have a fantastic marketing strategy because they're told you need marketing, and they absolutely do. I would never ever argue with that. What I would say is that as well as a good marketing strategy, you need an equally good sales strategy. In fact, what you really need is a completely awesome A1 tip-top sales and marketing strategy, fully combined, fully aligned, dedicated towards reaching out and finding new customers that will benefit from whatever your business is about. So we do a lot of work with those guys as well.
I'm so glad you said that at the moment, because it's the whole social media buzz is like, oh, get my content out, put it on there. That's all marketing. That's not sales strategy.
Yeah,
and like you
absolutely.
say, that's the backbone, but it just seems to be, I don't know, I'll throw it at social media.
That's it. You know what? I'll just open up a Twitter account, a Facebook account, Instagram, and I'll just bang a load of stuff out there. It's like throwing stuff at the wall. Some of it will hit, but most of it probably doesn't. For that stuff that does hit, well, do you have a strategy as to how you're going to get a sale out of it? Let's say a customer is really interested from what you're putting out there, and they get in touch with you. Well, then what do? It's like, oh my God, I've got a customer. How do you? They're probably ringing another half a dozen people who do exactly the same as what you do. So how do you put your strengths, your marginal gains, the elements of benefit to that customer, and actually get them to buy from you? That's how we help people doing that as well. So what was the other part of your question,
That's fine.
Jade?
I was going to say actually we'll end there, because I think that's great. That's good advice. And I'd like to invite you back to maybe talk more about that, the sales for like smaller business and the strategy, because I think that's very, very interesting. If you'd be happy to talk about that.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Delighted.
Lovely. So I'll say thank you, Paul, for doing the interview, and I'll put up some permalinks again for Paul's website. I suppose I just keep watching this space, and we'll talk more about that. It'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Jade. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
Good to see you.
Hi.